Hi, welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Well, here we are in March. We're in the midst of spring. Things are starting to warm up, literally around the world. Obviously, we got this war with Russia and Ukraine, and certain illnesses seem to be fading off into the distance, and we're on to the next kind of big dilemma. But we're wading through it. Andy, how are you, though?
Yeah, pretty good. Quite busy with events at the moment, and yeah, things are getting quite manic. So,
Quite manic, yeah.
Quite manic.
Is everyone trying to get a reading in before World War III?
I did an event last night, and there were 42 people that I had to hand manage and book in with time slots for readings. So I don't know why, but some events are kind of quiet, some events are average, and some absolutely skyrocket with no particular reason. And yeah, it was just absolutely crazy last night.
Okay, so for those that don't know what Andy does, he organises tuned-in events, which is basically out in the public psychic readings at pubs, venues, that kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that kind of thing, sort of psychic nights. There's two kind of events that we have. So we have a one-to-ones night, which is private one-to-one readings with individual psychics and readers. And then we have audiences, kind of clairvoyant audience demos as well. We actually did both last night, and they were in a conservatory area of a pub in Essex. I don't know why, but Essex is quite popular. For some reason, they quite like psychics out there. So Essex we do quite well. So this little conservatory of a pub, we had loads of people come in, about 42 people booked in, and I think a few more actually turned up on the night as well, randomly. And we had I think it was 7 readers and a load of little one-to-ones beforehand. Then we cleared out all of the one-to-one readers and started doing a little demo as well. So yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I'm not complaining because we did quite well, but it was my body's feeling it. I'm not the young person I once was. It was quite.
Do you try and limit them to how many you can do in a week, or do you just try and bang out as many as you can?
I usually do about 2 or 3 a week, kind of depending on what else is going on. But what a lot of people don't kind of realise is what goes on behind the scenes. So, for instance, my readers would just kind of see me arriving, and I just basically sit there, book people in, and then go home. But they don't see the liaising with the pubs, the texts, and the voice notes that I have to kind of like deal with. The posters, the banners, printing out the dates, going to the venues, putting the signs up in the pouring rain, much to the amusement of some of my readers who like the fact that I have to stand in the pouring rain putting up banners.
It's still nice, though, that you're putting up banners, physical banners, rather than just chucking stuff on the internet, so people see it as they drive or walk past, you know?
Well, this is it. Yeah, I mean, I think most people that come to our events really do so having seen the banners outside. It's a case of most people will be not so much kind of randomly passing, but when you get a pub that's on a choke point of traffic, like a roundabout or something, and you get a lot of traffic coming past, you'll see, from a distance, people see the banners, and it will kind of like spark their imagination to maybe go and investigate. And I've done some venues where we weren't allowed to put banners up, and they've completely flopped. So I never kind of like listen to a venue who says, "Oh, don't worry, we'll just self-promote it. We don't need banners," because they just collapse, and
they have no idea, do they?
They have no idea.
Yeah. Do you get any complaints from, like, I mean, I've always been to some places like spiritualist churches and things like that, and I've come out and found like little kind of religious notes on my car, you know, worship Jesus and that kind of stuff. You're a sinner, etc. Do you get any hassle from Christians?
I'm kind of disappointed that we don't. I actually went to somebody else's psychic fair once. I won't mention them, but because I actually started off doing one-to-one readings as a reader myself once, and there was a little group of Christians in a corner of a pub kind of praying for us, apparently, which is fair enough. Go for it, pray for it. But in terms of my actual events, no, not yet. We haven't. Something that has happened, we have done a local pub, quite local to me, where we went in there, and I was told by the pub manager that the local vicar went in there and did a blessing the day afterwards, to clear out all the demons and devils or whatever it is that they think that we're bringing in.
And he probably had a swift drink whilst he was there.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, that was quite funny. That was amusing. But no, we've not had any protests or anything. I don't know if I'd find it annoying. I probably would find it annoying, but I'd probably find it quite funny, actually, if that happened.
I mean, the thing is, I remember years ago there was like a mind, body, spirit shop that opened up near where I used to live, and I found out about it because it was in the papers. And the reason it got into papers is it's because there was all these Christians trying to shut it down, so it made the papers. And so that actually attracted me to go to the shop and find out more about it. So I went to the shop, got to know the people and things like that. And they said, yeah, there's all these Christians trying to shut them down. And I think within about 2 years they did get shut down because it was a very, very conservative type of area.
Yeah.
And it was too quiet in the shop. They would have been done better on a much busier high street. But I praised them for the fact that they kind of did their best, I suppose. But it's amazing how these alternative Christian places won't tolerate any other ideas. And yet, I suppose if a mosque had opened up in their high
that'd
street,
be fine.
they would have let them fine, no problem.
Yeah.
It really does annoy me, and this is why even as a youngster, when I was 20, I'd end up having endless debates with Christians on high streets and stuff like that. I mean, I remember once I was having a debate with this Christian who had his stall there with all his leaflets and banners and things like that, and I started asking him questions about Genesis and stuff like that. And this Indian guy came up and started listening to us talking, and so then he started to join in the debate. And I was saying one thing, and the Christian was saying, I think, was going backwards and forwards. And this Indian guy said in his very thick Indian accent, and he kind of got the wrong answer. He says, "The trouble is, it's always tit for tit." And that really broke the ice because me and the Christian guy just burst out laughing. So after that, I couldn't debate anymore because it completely ruined the pace of it. Anyway, we should go from debating.
On that slightly soft porn note.
Yeah, on the soft porn note, we'll better get on to the main thrust of the evening. Oh, still talking porn there. Anyway, do you want to introduce tonight's guest?
Yes, indeed. So many people are aware of the fact that when we talk to people about kind of crazy things that are going on, especially things to do with UFOs and especially to do with kind of like government conspiracies and stuff like that, I've had what's known as circus going on in my life. And what I mean by circus is crazy shit that shouldn't really be happening in a normal person's life, but does anyway, whether it's of paranormal versus kind of government. I don't know, something weird is going on in life when people get into the subject of ufology and have experiences, especially those who have experiences and especially those who've had ET encounters. And so without further ado, let's introduce Indigo, my friend not a million miles away in Hertfordshire. Hello, Indigo.
Hey, Andy. Hey, Neil.
Hello, welcome. How are you?
I'm really well. It's really good to be on the show tonight.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. So you're in Hertfordshire, just down the road from Andy, in the same town, I think, aren't you?
Oh, don't disclose my location.
We haven't said the town. We haven't said the town. We know you're in Hertfordshire.
Actually, I'm not too far from Andy. I'm in sunny Hertfordshire.
Sunny winter Hertfordshire. We can actually wave out the window at each other.
Yeah.
So you talk with Andy about the strange clown world type stuff. How does that tie in then with tonight's discussion?
So yeah, I mean, I'm no stranger to sort of weird paranormal activity. I mean, obviously, I don't.
There's been quite a few things going on in your life. I think what would be good actually, Indigo, if we because I did ask you to kind of like jot down like a very brief timeline of events, because having spoken to you over the years, I know there's a hell of a lot to cram in. So maybe if you could start off with some of the beginning things of the slightly paranormal or odd or strange things that have happened in your life from a young age.
So yeah, I mean, I'd probably go one step sort of further. I would probably start with the fact that I'm a psychic medium. That's what I'm known for. That's kind of what I based my whole career on for the last 15 years. However, as a psychic medium, I don't just deal with the spirit world. I understand that there is more than, spirit. I am a UFO contactee. I've experienced UFOs. I do house clearances. I do attachment release. I've studied in the demonology side. So yeah, I mean, there's been a lot there over the years, I would say. I mean, when I first started out, I wouldn't say I was about love and light and kind of angels. I never was really one with a whole kind of spiritual movement. I know a lot of psychic mediums would generally start out in the kind of like churches and platform. And for me, that was something I never really wanted to go down. I mean, I have done courses, I have been to spiritual churches, but for me, it never felt right, to be honest. I mean, in my bloodline, I'm half Egyptian, Romany gypsy. So on both sides, the psychic ability runs in my bloodline. But I would say probably my first near-death experience when I was 8 years old, when I drowned in the sea, that's when I guess I had my activation, where I saw spirit, basically. I was given a choice whether I wanted to sort of pass over or whether to stay. I didn't see the being, I just felt the intelligence of it speaking to me telepathically. I was only 8 years old, to be honest. And I just remember saying that, like, I don't want to cross over, I'm not ready to. And I was given that choice. And the next thing, I was being washed up on the shore. And then from that point on, I would say that's when things, I guess, got strange for me. I started to see spirit very, very clearly. I started to get what we call downloads, which is sort of information and being told about events. Obviously, being so young back then, I didn't really understand what was happening to me. I remember telling my mom, and she was telling me, look, you know, I understand, I have foresight, I see these things as well, but others won't understand that. And she kind of told me to kind of keep it to myself, really. I was always a bit of a strange kid, to be honest. I never really fitted in. I guess it wasn't until really my 20s when I really started to use my psychic ability, and when I started to get precognitive ability, which is world events, where I was seeing major events happening, and then putting it out there, you know. And that's kind of where my reputation kind of built, from my accuracy of world events. And again, I've always wanted to show evidential mediumship and evidential psychic ability. I've never been one of these horoscope psychics. And then from that, I went into doing readings for people one-to-one, you know, just reading for normal, average people. But behind the scenes, I think with the developing the meditation and with the techniques and the more readings I was doing, I started to get telepathic communication from beings that weren't just spirit. Now, I never used to believe in UFOs or aliens. I used to think, you know, kind of it was, I don't know, it was a bit of a stigma around it. And because I hadn't experienced it, I kind of didn't know whether to believe in it. I knew about spirit because I'd seen it. You know, I've been working with spirit for a really, really long time. But the whole concept of, you know, little green men or Martians, you know, it just, I don't know, it just didn't sit right with me. Until one night I actually had a dream state. And at first I thought, you know, it's just a dream, you know. But with the information that I was given, I put it out there, and the event started to happen, which really freaked me out, to be honest, because I was moving into a realm that I wasn't an expert. I had no understanding, and to be honest, it kind of blew my mind. And I think you can understand this, Andy, obviously, because you come equally from a background, and also Neil, I know that you sort of have done sort of psychic and mediumship, and I think for the belief system of knowing spirits and angels and things like that, but then aliens, it's a whole different energy in itself. And it kind of blew my mind, and it started making me question about my reality, which then got me into a whole new journey, I guess. And I think the more I started to go down that kind of rabbit hole, asking questions, you know, then trying to connect deliberately to get the downloads, that's when really weird things started to happen around me.
So what sort of age were you when you first had when did you have that dream, when you met the being, and what did it look like? Was it a typical grey, or could you see it or not see it?
No, it wasn't a typical grey. See, this is another thing for me which was difficult, because I think there is a lot of press coverage and a lot of knowledge around greys, and people generally talk about the greys, right? And obviously, coming from a sort of a psychic and mediumship background, I really didn't know, I didn't have anything to base it on. I think what age I was, I think I was about sort of 28, 29. Okay, from when I can remember. And it's interesting. I had just sort of, I've been in and out of development circles, even though I'm a natural born psychic. I always like to kind of hone my ability and kind of, go to different places. And I joined quite an interesting circle. I obviously won't name the person, but they were actually quite out there in the way they taught and spoke about aliens. And that's kind of what drew me, because I was always fascinated, even though I didn't necessarily believe at that point. And I think it was something with that circle potentially, or with what I was being exposed to. Maybe it was the energy with the circle. And I remember the leader of the circle, she kind of had a download, and she said to me, "You do realize, Indigo, you're going to start getting alien communication, and your ability, you're going to start using it for really kind of deep things." And I didn't really understand, and I didn't really believe her at that time. But she said, "Be warned." She said, "With your visions will come problems, and you're going to have strange events, like you say, Andy, the circus happening around you." And I laughed it off. I didn't know what to think. And then 2 nights after she told me that, that's when I had the dream. So going back to sort of what did it look like, I think it wasn't a great, after doing research, obviously after the years, it looks more kind of like Avatar-ish. I didn't see its
blue type being.
No, it was. So I only saw its kind of head and its shoulders, and it kind of looked, I guess Avatar-ish, but it had kind of different colors on the side of its face. It was kind of scaly. It had reds, greens, and blues on one side. And I don't know if you've seen the film Avatar, but it kind of looked that kind of image in a way. But it wasn't physically talking to me as we are now. It was talking to me telepathically, and it was showing me codes and symbols and telling me to go to a location. And if I go to the location, I will be shown something. So that was the first kind of weird dream state or encounter, I guess. But over time, I would say that I've had communication from the Cyrus energy, or the blue beams, the Syrian, the Cyrus energy. And again, for me, I'm half Egyptian. So after doing research and trying to understand and piece this together, it kind of made sense why I was having that energy kind of come in, because they're linked with ancient Egypt, Atlantis, and my bloodline. So I moved into also sort of the shamanic sides as well, and energy healing. And I think as well, part of my energy healing and the activations have been aided by the UFO contact. They've been helping me with my healing, and also with my world events. I really do feel now it's not really spirit telling me. I feel they're giving me downloads of these world events.
So focusing just on the kind of like the childhood side of things, would it be fair to say that up until around the age of 29, there either wasn't any UFO contact, or there wasn't anything of a alien nature during that period?
No, I think there was, but I was confusing it as spirit.
Right.
I used to get faces over my ceiling. I would see balls of light outside my window. I would see flying orbs, or what I believe to be orbs. But looking back and everything that I've now learned, I realize now it wasn't orbs. It wasn't spirit. It was actually what I feel UFO connection.
There's something kind of we're finding, Neil, aren't we? That a lot of guests are there used to be traditionally this kind of the camp of the spiritual and the paranormal and kind of like the ghost community, and then you've got the UFO and the aliens community, and never the twain shall meet. It's kind of like you're in the ghost camp or you're in the alien camp. And we're finding that our guests are very much kind of like showing that they're kind of merged. There's a crossover. So people who have seen UFOs and have UFO encounters and alien encounters often then go on to see ghosts and spirits, and people who go down the line of kind of ghosts, spirits and hauntings sometimes then end in the demon realm and end up in the kind of interdimensional ET realm. Have you found that, Neil, around?
Yeah, there was a guy I read about who had a UFO encounter, and I can't remember exactly when it was, but I think it was by a canal side or something, and he was fishing early one morning, and he saw these what he thought were small kids running towards him at 4 o'clock in the morning. He thought, what are these kids doing here? And they were ushering him to come down the canal bank. So he kind of followed them in a kind of, the semi-dawn of light kind of thing. I think his dog was with him as well. And he walked around the corner and there was this landed craft or something. So he was taken aboard. And they examined him. They said, "You're too old and infirm," or something. They he sort of said he was 80 or something. And they said, "You're too old and infirm for our purposes." But afterwards, he started having many kind of paranormal experiences. Like he saw his friend that had been dead for 45 years. His friend appeared to him in the room. So therefore, he started to become more like a medium, I suppose. Where, I mean, I don't think they necessarily said, "Oh, by the way, you're going to have mediumistic powers," but some offshoot of it, of the encounter, some sort of triggered something in his psyche, maybe, for him to become sort of psychic. So, but it doesn't happen to all people that go aboard UFOs. But it seems to be a lot of cases where people encounter UFOs seem to then see ghosts or strange beasts or Sasquatches. It all kind of goes into one big strange circus itself without even helicopters chasing you down the road. It just becomes really bizarre. What I was going to ask Indigo is that, going back to the sort of episode in the sea where you nearly drowned, was you aware that you were going out of your body and dying, or did that have to be related to you by this being?
No, I knew I was going to die. I remember very much running into the sea. I shouldn't have gone in there, to be honest. It was very stormy. There were like flags out saying basically don't go into the sea. But me being, a naughty little kid, I was always a really strong swimmer. I was like a water baby, and I just remember kind of going in there, just thinking I just like paddle, because I used to love the waves. I loved the sea, and I remember kind of, I don't know if it was like a current or it was something that pulled me. I just remember like a big wave coming and it hit me, and I kind of went under, and I tried to kind of bob back up and I couldn't. And I felt like a vortex or something pulling me under, sucking me under.
Like a riptide.
Yeah, and I know that they were the only people in the sea at the time were like seasoned surfers, like when it's crazy weather, the surfers are in there. And I remember getting under, and I just was panicking, and I went through the normal kind of like the choking, not being able to breathe, the fear, and I kept trying to like bob back up, and I couldn't, and I literally got to the top and I got sucked back under. And it was terrifying, to be honest. And all I can remember is that I'm dying. Okay, I'm dying. I mean, I'm 8 years old, and obviously for me, I didn't understand, what dying is really, but I just remember choking. I couldn't breathe. I remember thinking like I need to get air, and just kind of like struggling and fighting. And I remember kind of hearing a voice in my mind telling me to not panic, not to worry, trying to calm me down, which is the most bizarrest feeling while I'm drowning and I'm choking and I can't see. And then obviously all the normal bodily functions of where literally, losing kind of like my senses, or I can't see. I don't know how long I was onto there, to be honest, but I just remember that period of choking, not being able to breathe, and then everything just going white, like a white light around me. Now, I know people talk about seeing their life flash before them, but that wasn't what happened to me. I didn't see my life flash before me. I just remember seeing a really piercing white light. I remember a calmness washing over me, and from not being able to breathe to suddenly feeling like I could breathe. I don't know if I was unconscious at that point, but I just remember this intelligent being saying to me, "It's okay. You're going to be okay. Don't struggle. Don't panic." And I remember kind of in my mind or crying and kind of, obviously I'm under the water, but in my mind, I'm like thinking about my mum, thinking about I don't want to die, that I need to get out of here. And then I remember feeling like something was trying to erase my mind, like my memory banks. It was almost like I was starting to forget who I was or forget these memories. And this higher being was trying to literally erase my mind. And I was fighting it. And I was like, I'm not going to forget this. And it was saying, you need to relax. You need to let go. You need to allow us to do this. We're helping you. And it was almost like everything was being wiped, to the point of where it then started to try and wipe my mum, my connection with my mum, my dad. And I was fighting it. I was refusing. And I'm like, I was just calling out to my mum, and it was saying, you have a choice. Do you want to come to the white light? And then I felt like peace wash over me, like never before. I'm 8 years old, so obviously what is peace? Like, who knows? But I just remember this feeling, and it felt calm, it felt peaceful, it just felt stillness. I couldn't hear anything anymore. Before, it was the sea, it was the bed, I was being kind of dragged underneath it, and then the next thing, it was quietness. And then I just remember in my mind, I was just saying, no, I don't want to come. I'm not ready to come. And they said, then if you go back, you won't return. We can't take you with us. And I said, I want to go back. Then I remember feeling, now whether this actually happened or not, I don't know, but it felt like I'd been lifted out of the sea, like carried by something. And then suddenly lifted up into the air. And then I was placed onto the shore. And the next thing I remember is just having people screaming and shouting and shaking me and trying to wake me up. And my dad's kind of running up, panicking and grabbing hold of me and saying, am I okay? Am I okay? And then them calling an ambulance. And I just remember waking up and I'm on the shore. However, I remembered exactly what had happened. And when I opened my eyes, I didn't see the being, but I felt it still with me. And then obviously I was really, shaken up. And then I remember after going to the hospital and then coming out of that, I remember my mum putting me in the bath. She was bathing me. I had all cuts and I was all scratched up, and she was talking to me about what happened. And she was saying, she was so lucky that, I could have died, that they nearly lost me, that I should never run off again. And then I remember just sitting in the bath, and I looked up at her and I said, Mom, I want to go back. I want to go back. And she's like, what are you saying? And I'm like, I want to go back. I feel sadness. And I started to cry. And she's like, I don't understand. Like, and I told her, obviously, what I'm saying about this intelligent kind of life force and the white light. And she was just saying, look, you're very stressed out. Just, let's not talk about this again, sort of thing. And I just felt a weird emptiness. And again, being 8 years old, obviously now I can really reflect on this now. But as a child, I didn't understand. It was so strange. I wouldn't say that I started to get activity straight away. Obviously, that really shook me up. I would say a couple of weeks later, when I was lying in my bed, that's when I started to see kind of faces on my ceiling. And it wasn't what you would class as spirit, I don't think. They were kind of green faces, weird lights down the walls, the ceilings. I'd start getting balls of light outside of my window, just flying around. And I used to be scared to sleep in the dark. I'd have to have a night lamp on, or I'd go running into my mum's room and tell her, look, I can't sleep. I'm seeing all these things. So she'd say, look, get into bed with me. And I'd tell her about these things. And she was just saying, look, these things are real, and trying to calm me down, but not going too much into it, obviously, because I was young. My mum was never one to go that much into it. She understood and she knew, but I think she was trying to protect me back then. I mean, obviously I didn't set out to be a psychic medium. It wasn't something that I wanted. And I remember my mum always saying to me, you don't want to do this as a job. You don't want to do this. It's a hard life. And I think she wanted me to go in to something else. And looking back and knowing what I know now, I completely get that. And when I hear sort of other psychics or mediums, or people come to me and they're like, you're so lucky having all these abilities, it must be amazing. I'm like, no, it really isn't. It really isn't. I think, knowing what I know now, if I could go back and choose to be like this and see the things that I see and have the things that happen, I probably wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't sign up for this.
But would you want to end up stacking shelves in Tesco's or something? I mean,
well, first of all, look, there's nothing wrong with stacking shelves in Tesco's. I know a lot of people that, do, and at the end of the day, hats off to them. It's a job at the end of the day. And who am I to say, I'm better than that? It's a job. But I think it's very, very difficult doing what I do. The stuff that I've seen, it's draining, and it's terrifying at times. Obviously, I mean, over the years, I've got used to it now. It's, I guess, my norm. I don't know anything different. But it's been difficult, it's really, really difficult to kind of understand and process and piece this all together. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I understand everything that I'm getting and that I've been shown, because I really can't. And I don't think that the human mind can comprehend really the extent of the communications. I mean, as I said, I know that spirit world exists, and I certainly know that UFOs exist, but I would say it goes deeper than that. I feel there's many different dimensional beings. It's not just the case of like heaven and hell, or aliens and angels, and then spirit, and then God. It's far deeper than that from what I've seen. I've been to many different dimensions. I've been to many kind of astral levels, because I can do astral projection. Again, that was something what happened to me as a child. I used to come out of my body. I didn't try to. It would just happen. And at that time, I didn't know it was astral projection. It was horrible. But over time, through my journeys, I would say that I have seen many different beings that exist in different dimensions, for sure. And it isn't just UFOs that are overseeing this planet. It's so much more deeper than that.
Well, we often go down the directions of Sasquatch and Dogman and God knows what else of on our show. There's just so much weirdness in this planet, and Neil, you've probably found a consistent pattern with people in terms of one thing leads to another. It starts off as like one thing, and then it kind of like goes into more things and more things and more things. And another like thing that I've noticed is that people who almost die, who have near-death experiences, often come back with supernatural tendencies. So whether they've been struck by lightning, or whether they've drowned, or whether very often actually hitting on the head. Somebody's been hit on the head, and I wouldn't advise it for those listening.
Edgar Cayce was a case point in that.
Sleeping
Prophet. Yeah.
Remind us of Edgar Cayce.
Okay, he was a guy. He was a family photographer in America, and he. I think it was a 15-year-old boy at the time, but he got struck on the head either by a baseball or a baseball bat. I'm not sure which, but it's something to do with baseball. And it knocked him into a coma for about 8 or 9 days. And they couldn't rouse him from it. And he was just laying on this couch. And after about the 6th day, this voice came out of him and basically talked to whoever was like tending to him and sort of gave them the treatment of how they could bring him out the coma.
Wow.
And it wasn't Edgar Cayce, but it was some other voice, super consciousness, spirit guide, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. But and so they followed the instructions, and he did eventually come out of this coma. And then as time went on, he was able to slip into this kind of trance-like state, and this being, voice, whatever, would come through him, and he would kind of diagnose people's illnesses and tell them what they should do to actually heal themselves, like take this, take that, or visit that spa, or drink this water 3 times a day, or whatever it may be. I remember there's an interesting case where he was given a reading to someone and says, you've got to take this particular drug for whatever condition they had. It's not actually manufactured anymore, but I can locate it for you. And basically this spirit, whatever, went off to this place in Germany and said it's at the back of this shelf in an old pharmacy in this street in Germany, in the town, and that's where you'll get it. And these people, somehow contacted this pharmacy in Germany and managed to buy this drug off them that they had long forgotten. It's at the back of their shelf. That was the kind of guy he was. But he also talked about reincarnation and Atlantis and ancient Egypt and that kind of stuff. He had predictions as well. So it wasn't a case, he wasn't just a diagnostic kind of healer, but he had everything. That's why he's known as the sleeping prophet. He would go into a trance, make predictions, do psychic readings for people, everything like that. But his day job was that he was a family photographer taking photographs. So he had a very kind of ordinary job. But on the other side of the coin, he was an extraordinary psychic. There's been many books, and there's even an Edgar Cayce Foundation in West Virginia Beach, I think, in America, where they've got all his readings there for anyone that wants to tap into it. And lots of people go there for healing because they look at the readings and think, oh, that's what I suffer from. And he gives a diagnosis of someone from 1933, and they follow that instruction. Hey, presto, they come out on top as well, Very interesting guy, yeah. So but yeah, like you say, that occurred with a knock on the head. Philip Kinsella, our friend Philip Kinsella, he had a drowning experience in a swimming pool in South Africa.
It's weird, isn't it? I have a theory that what might be going on is that when we're born into this world, obviously we come from either spirit or some kind of dimension or something that's kind of like not of planet Earth. And because this planet Earth is kind of like a control system of religion and kind of mainstream science, this is my theory, we grow up and we kind of like, we lose our spirituality, we lose who we really are and where we've come from, because religion tells you there's heaven, hell and a God, and you must trust this Bible or whatever religious book you want to insert in this space here. You know, and you know, it kind of limits your spirituality, limits your knowledge of where you really come from. Or if you go down the other spectrum, if you reject religion, you go down the science spectrum. Oh, we're just kind of like random neurons firing in the brain. There's no such thing as heaven and hell or God or, you know, spirituality. Once you die, that's it, finito. And so most people are stuck in that paradigm. So what I think is going on is, I don't know if it's the universe orchestrating it or whether it's our own souls orchestrating it, but some kind of incident is orchestrated so we are forced to pass over, forced to reconnect with spirit, but we're not coming back as a baby at you know, 0 years old. We're coming back as like a child or an adult who is comprehending that, okay, I've just been to the spirit world and now I'm back here in the earthly plane, and now I can comprehend that there's more to life than just kind of like, you know, what science or religion tells me. And maybe those incidents of whether it's drowning or having your head knocked or something of that nature somehow kickstarts the spirituality and the psychic and the paranormal in your life. I don't know what you both think of that.
I think it's possible, although there'd be plenty of people statistically who'll say, well, I've had a motorbike accident, I was in a coma for 6 weeks and I've roused it and nothing psychic has ever happened to me. But it could be that maybe they're the people that are not meant to have these experiences. But there must be a certain percentage of psychic people that are going to get involved in accidents. And for them, it's going to be more profound because maybe they're just much more psychically jazzed up or something in some way.
Yeah.
And so Indigo, Philip, Edgar Cayce, people like that, when they have these accidents, they're much more in tune with that sort of higher self, the other universe or whatever you want to call it. And they're literally just reconnecting that battery terminal to get that recharge. And I think that becomes almost, in most cases, it seems to be that those incidences seem to be the steering course where it changes your course of your life into a completely different direction from maybe how it would have turned out. That, you know, that now there's a road that you haven't taken where you didn't have that accident in the sea and you did become a shelf stacker at Tesco, and you were still involved in reading the future even at Tesco's because you was having to read the best before labels on the tins of beans and find out if you take them off the shelf or not. But
in Indigo, I think you've actually had 2 further incidents where you had either near-death experiences or almost lost your life as well. Do you want to go into those?
Yeah, I mean, there was another instance later in my life where I was held hostage overnight and at knife point, and then I was suffocated, and then I had major head trauma, and I was thrown down a flight of stairs, which left me with a dislocated shoulder, dislocated sternum here. My hip was fractured, my nose was broken, my teeth were knocked out. It was pretty violent. So I was lucky to sort of escape that, to be honest. I managed to get out of the flat. And then I collapsed in the street, and then I got rushed into hospital. So that was pretty horrific. And it took me a long time physically, emotionally to sort of recover from that. And interesting enough, so it's almost like rewinding, where we're speaking about obviously like major trauma or instance can create or activate psychic ability. With the second trauma that happened to me, my ability, it got taken, or it felt like for a period of time I was disconnected, where I wasn't getting any psychic downloads. I wasn't getting any psychic visions. Now, whether that was just because of trauma or whether that was because they knew that my body needed time to heal, because again, doing this kind of work energetically, it takes a lot out of the person. I'm not just a card reader. If you're just reading tarot, that's different. But because I also have transfiguration, and again, this is something that's kind of happened later on. I kind of didn't understand it, but now I do. I think it's always been there, but I didn't know it to be transfiguration, where almost like where I feel an energy kind of going into my body, and when my face would start to change or shift. And others would be saying, they'd be freaked out, and they're like, oh my God, like you're looking different. And I would speak in different voices, not different languages, and I would come out with bizarre things, or it would be of people's relatives. I'd start having the mannerisms of their loved ones, or giving key information of people that have passed over. So what I'm saying is, with the second incident, I think they knew that they had to kind of put me on autopilot. So I went for a really long time. I think it was about 6 months to a year where I literally stopped reading. I couldn't read. I couldn't get any downloads. I didn't even feel spirit was around me. And that was difficult, to be honest, because I went from sort of 8 years old to kind of then feeling or having this presence to then it going. I did reconnect in at a later point. And then obviously I've had 2 more kind of instances. I had CV, I've had pneumonia, and that was quite close for me. I literally ended up in intensive care, and I was kind of between 2 states. So for me, again, I felt like I was quite close to the edge with that. And I started to get more downloads. I started to see visions. I started to, again, have activation. Again, I do believe that I'm here from intervention. I'm literally like a cat with 9 lives. Like, I've been in so many incidences, not only with myself, but I always end up being near accidents, or where accidents happen, to the point of where I went through a period of where I had to kind of look into that and started to think, am I creating that with my energy? When I was young and in my teens, I was quite angry. I had a lot of energy. It was out of control, and I didn't know how to harness it or control it. But then over the years, I've learned to ground and balance myself. I mean, even at home, I've gone through like 4 or 5 TVs that fly off the wall. Literally, like, I've sent you pictures, Andy, in the past of that. And it got to the point where I couldn't even have a TV in my bedroom. There was no point. It would literally fly off the wall. Now, you could say that was maybe paranormal, or maybe it was my own energy, creating that. I guess we'll never know. But going back to the accidents, I've been around a lot of accidents where major things are happening. I end up intervening, helping the person, or playing a key part in that way. I've started to realize later on in life that no, it wasn't my energy. I was meant to be there. I was placed there to help the people. But also with myself, I would say that definitely with the incidents that have happened, and the third encounter, I was in a car accident, a car crash. I was it was a near car accident. I was on the back of the seat and I was asleep. And I remember being shook awake, and I heard the voice, again, the same voice as I heard in the sea, saying, you've got to wake up, you've got to wake up. And I remember waking up and suddenly seeing a car coming at the vehicle that we were in, like at lightning speed. And all of a sudden I screamed to the person who's driving. I'm like, look out. And then they quickly looked around, and then all of a sudden we felt the car get lifted up into the air and then moved, literally. I know this sounds crazy, but lifted up. As we got lifted up, the car missed us by inches and crashed into a tree. It was being chased by the police. And we swerved and we kind of crashed into the roadside on the other side. So that could have been fatal, literally. Like, if that had hit us, it would have killed us. It would have killed me. I had no seatbelt. I was in the back. And if I hadn't have been woken up at that time, the driver was really shook up. And, they were like, they just could not believe what had happened. And we all felt in the vehicle that we were lifted up. We didn't see what lifted us up. We just saw a bright light and we were lifted. We felt literally like we're lifted. Now, again, devil's advocate, you could say that maybe we swerved, maybe, shock. I don't know. But it was near impossible to, at that speed, to quickly move. It was like we moved out of the way really quickly. So
basically something intervened, something kind of like
I believe that, and everybody in that vehicle believes that. 100%.
So shall we I think, have we covered most of the let's go let's just say pre age 29. Have we covered most things pre age 29? Were there any ghost incidents specifically, or apparitions, or poltergeist activity, or anything that we've missed for that? Yeah,
I mean, as I said, with the TVs flying off the wall, and I would have kind of like weird phenomena of lights being turned on and off, and like light bulbs. I went through a phase of where I keep blowing light bulbs everywhere in all the rooms.
Yeah.
But again, you know, I just because I'm a psychic and I believe in this stuff, I don't like to just jump to, oh my God, that's paranormal. You know, there could be reasonings for that. But I do think I put that down to probably poltergeist activity.
It sounds like poltergeist
energy.
to me,
yeah, due to my energy back then.
Yeah.
I do remember waking up. I would see apparitions over my bed all the time, as I said, even, you know, from a little girl, like the faces on my wall, on my ceiling, not being able to sleep with the.
And would the faces be people that you recognise, or people that are completely random?
No, they were random. They didn't even look human.
Wow. Okay.
I was so terrified and didn't like sleeping with the light off, and I would sleep with my mum until I was quite old, to be honest, in the bedroom.
So when you say they're not human, can you give a description? Would you say they look alien looking, demonic looking, or what description would you give of them?
I wouldn't say they're demonic, because obviously later on in life I now know what sort of entities and demons look like, because I've moved into sort of entity removal and extraction work. Obviously now being a trained shamanic practitioner. And I think that led me onto that path because of the nature of what I've been seeing. They weren't greys. They didn't look human. They were strange looking faces, different colors, weird shapes. I would see kind of flashes of light flying across my room, and the faces, it's really hard to describe, but they definitely weren't human features. I guess, again, looking at what I have seen with sort of the UFO sides, or what I call the star being, because I think a lot of people talk about the little greys, right? But for me, I haven't really encountered the greys. I haven't.
Probably a good thing, but myself and Neil are very aware there are many different species, including human hybrid type species, and you've got Nordic species and all sorts. So
I mean, I have been taken onto a ship, and I have seen activity on the ships. But again, my encounters have been a little bit different to, I guess, what is put out there in the mainstream. But that happened later on. That wasn't in my 20s. That was in my 30s, when I guess I've been taken out of my body. I mean, I've woken up and I've literally been on my ceiling spinning around and seeing like a wave of green light around me, like electric green light, and going into my body. And again, hearing the voice in my head telling me, keep calm. We're doing an activation. We're doing a cellular upgrade. And feeling pain shooting all in my body, and getting tingly feelings and losing complete track of time. And then seeing myself in a bird's eye view on my ceiling, but then my body in the bed, but my body's on the ceiling. It's bizarre. And then waking up and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and thinking like, what has gone on here? And each time that these things have happened, or I'm getting the telepathic communication, or seeing these codes or these symbols, I would say that my psychic ability has increased and my healing abilities have increased. And again, I find that these beings come to me before major world events. They will show me in dream state, or they'll show me visions. They'll guide me, or I'll see it playing out like a film. And then within sort of 2 to 3 days, anything up to a month, then the things will start to happen.
So let's get into the meat and vegetables of it. What was your first inkling or first signs that you had a little bit of circus entering your life, shall we say?
That's a good question. I would say probably when I started to get black helicopters outside my house, and the lights through my window, and getting weird phone calls in the middle of the night, and literally having strange people ringing on my doorbell at random times of the night, doing welfare checks, or
okay, let's slow it down. Let's go one thing at a time. So
this is after the UFO experience, I'm presuming.
Yeah. This wasn't before. I mean, actually, when that happened, and Andy, you'll know this as well, because we documented it. Where it really started to go quite crazy was after I left the not psychic group, but I got kicked out of the.
Let's call it a spiritual group.
The spiritual group, of where then the leader had sort of had the downloads and said, look, your life's going to be turned upside down. You're going to start having channeling ability. You're going to connect with UFOs. And it's going to get crazy.
What year was this roughly?
Oh, God. It was probably about 8 years. potentially.
Which is funny enough about the same time we met.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd known each other a little bit longer because I remember telling you about it, you know, and you were like, this is going to get interesting. And then I would say that night I had helicopter, and I, you know what, I didn't think much about it, right? Helicopters. I just thought maybe it's a police helicopter. There's nothing, you know, it's just a helicopter. But then after having the lights shone through my window, it was a bit weird. But again, I just kind of put it to, you know, maybe there's someone on the loose that night. But then after that, it was almost like every other night, this black Apache, it was an Apache helicopter, would literally be circling around my flat.
Yeah.
It was bizarre. And literally the beams would be coming through my window.
Yeah. Neil, does this sound familiar to you?
Yeah. I mean, your neighbours, did they talk about it the next day and sort of say, what's all this? Is that something you know about? I mean, did you kind of say, I think it's to do with me, or did you just deny all knowledge, or what?
No, like, again, I really had a good relationship with my neighbour downstairs. I mean, she kind of knew about some of the things, obviously, because I was in a flat, so she was below me. So obviously she's heard like buzzes and stuff. And at that time I was single. So we'd look out for each other. So obviously, you know, when she's hearing random buzzers, because all our buzzers were connected, or people, strange men knocking on my door asking, you know, to be buzzed in, she's going to be paying attention and asking questions, or if I'm okay. So yeah, I mean, she would joke at times, sort of saying, look, you know, why are you on the run? Like, are the police after you? What's that about? I'm like, I don't know. At first, like I said, we didn't think it was anything abnormal. We're just like, maybe there's some weirdo on the loose. But then obviously after every other night getting the same, and it would happen at the same time. And interestingly, again, I went through a phase of where I really was kind of working on my ability, where I was doing a lot of readings, I was doing a lot of meditation, I was diving deep, doing a lot of research, trying to understand kind of what was happening to me. As I said, I understood what spirit was. That was easy for me. But when I'm getting telepathic communication from weird kind of like avatar or kind of like strange looking beings showing me codes that I started to journal and then look into and then find out that they're genuine, they're real things. That's when it started to kind of freak me out. And then I literally would be going out and I'd get stared at from random people. And I know you could say, well, you know, that's nothing new there. People look at people. But to the point where I was getting followed by strange people, they'll be staring at me. Like, I would have weird people coming up to me, like asking me questions about UFOs, asking me strange questions, like in the street. Like, for one instance, I was in Stevenage and I was walking along and this man literally stopped me. He was dressed in a black suit. He was Asian looking, and he stopped me and he said, look, do you have the time? And I, you know, went to look at my watch to give him the time. And as I told him the time, he went and touched my hand. And I was like, what's going on here? And then he said, I know your name. And I'm like, what? And he actually said what my name was, my birth name. And he said, I know that you're getting alien communication. And he said, do you understand why they're communicating with you? And I'm like, who are you? And then he told me his name. And he said to me that I won't understand what's happening right now, but he does, and that there would be somebody else that would make contact with me, and that there would be more downloads to come, and that he travels to different places and he goes to different people. And he said, do I understand what the codes are? And I'm like, what codes? And he said that you're okay until you understand what the codes are, but if you do understand them, that's when you become in danger. I was like, what is happening? This is crazy. Like, is this some crazy man? It scared me, quite frankly. And he said he needed to be going now. And he gave me this weird crystal in my hands and walked off. It was a really tiny little stone. And he said to not tell anyone that he'd spoken to me and that I'm being watched. And I'm like, this is so creepy. I mean, I know it's Stevenage High Street, you know. Obviously I went and told a few people about that, and they're just like, look, get rid of the stone. Like, just get rid of it. Like, that's just weird. And again, and then after that, I got weird phone calls, literally people ringing me up, again, putting the phone down, withheld numbers, ringing me, asking me, am I okay? Welfare checks, ringing on my doorbell. Again, a man turns up in a suit, 2 a.m. in the morning. Again, it might have been a wrong number. But again, he knew my name. He was asking if I was there. My neighbor took the buzzer and said, no, like, who is this? And he said, I need to speak to Indigo. And then she was like, what do you want? He's like, I'm doing a welfare check. A welfare check for what?
At 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah,
a welfare check. And obviously I spoke to people that obviously understand this. I mean, the police were called, obviously, because I was worried. The police had a look around, the man had gone, and they said it was really strange language to be being used, because they said a welfare check normally is somebody either linking, it's what they use in the police, or they use doctors if they're doing like, you know, a call or something. So a welfare check. And the fact that he was dressed in a suit at that time, and they said, you know, they wouldn't normally turn up like that, not in that capacity. And my neighbor had seen him as well and also identified him. He had a strange accent as well. Again, he just disappeared. There was no sighting. It was so bizarre, and obviously not many people knew where I lived. I wasn't giving my address out, and because he knew my name, I didn't know any doctors at that point. I hadn't called any police until obviously that incident had happened. And then after that, the helicopters came back again, circling my house. I would say then after that point, that's when it really kind of cranks up with the UFO sightings. And on my phone, I've captured footage, which I still have to this day, of strange crafts in the sky, big balls of light outside my window. And then even being with my partner on the motorway where we were coming back, we remember seeing a ball of light in the sky, which we followed to Hudson Airfield, which is abandoned. It's meant to be an abandoned airfield. This was some years ago, a couple of years back. And we started to live stream this. It was so bizarre. And there were triangular shapes, crafts, landing in the actual airfield. And as I was live streaming this, you know, to Facebook, a car pulled up by the side of us with 4 men in, 2 men in the back, balaclavas on, and 1 in the front, and another man. And he was asking us what we were filming, what we were doing, if we were okay. We're like, we're fine. We don't need any help, you know? And then he saw that I was filming, and he was saying for us to stop filming. And I wasn't, because I felt scared at that point. And then they drove off, and then they kept coming back, watching us. And my partner at the time was like, we need to go. We need to get out of here. And we continued kind of watching, and the crafts were landing. They were triangular. They kept doing circles and landing. We were recording all of this, and then he said, look, let's go. So we started to head like home, but then he was like, we're being tagged. He's got a background at the time in the police side of things, so he knows when we're when being tagged and how to kind of outmaneuver and covert kind of surveillance and driving techniques. So we kind of went down a slip road as they kind of drove off and went in another direction. As we got back, we noticed a whole petrol tank had been wiped. We put a whole petrol tank in. We started to feel quite dizzy and strange. And his phone got wiped. His battery got wiped, and my phone got wiped as well. Some of the material that I captured got wiped. But luckily, because I'd been live streaming, it was still on Facebook. And a lot of people had witnessed and seen it because it was live. That night was really strange. We had, again, a ball of light outside our window. He went into kind of like a weird deep sleep. And then I remember going to sleep later on. But then again, we lost track of time, and we woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning, 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And it's almost like we just lost like a day, half a day. It was so surreal. And again, when we looked at our phone, half his footage had been wiped. And then after that, he said that he started to get tagged, that he was being followed to work, and that he got called into his office, and they asked him what he'd been up to the previous night. He started to get questions. Wow. And he started to have issues at work. Obviously can't disclose kind of everything that he worked in. I mean, he's not in that line of work, and obviously I'm not gonna, it's up to him to sort of discuss that side of things. But again, that's when things started to get weird. Like for him, he was always quite open-minded, and I think he always thought I was quite eccentric. But then after getting with me and actually seeing it with his own eyes, he was like, this is some weird stuff.
Neil, does the helicopter things ring any bells with you?
Yeah, it sounds intriguing.
Do you remember some of my experiences?
Yeah,
Oh,
because
do
you
you
had
remember
similar
me
ones, didn't
talking
you?
about the helicopters, the people flashing headlights, the phone
Yeah.
calls, and all that
It
kind of
could
thing?
it could even be the very same helicopter. You know, they cover that area.
I think I suspect that when people have their light on, let's just call it the light, whatever you want, like The Shining kind of thing. When the light comes on, you get flagged. Because I don't know if you remember me, Neil, talking about how I got into all of this was very love and light and fluffy and rainbows, and it was all about the spiritualism and spirit and everything's wonderful. And then suddenly I was getting the helicopters buzzing around my house again and again and again. And you remember me saying it's like I was trying to work out why the helicopter would be there, and I wasn't thinking paranormal or circus or anything like that. Like Indigo, I was thinking maybe it's somebody on the run, maybe they're kind of like looking for heat signatures on roofs for drug busts or something like that. But when you get a helicopter coming again and again and again and again, you begin to wonder what the hell's going on, because it costs something like £1,600 per half hour to get those things running. Why on earth would a helicopter be kind of interested in me or somebody like Indigo? And then you begin to realize there's things like there's black budgets, isn't there? And there's kind of like shadow governments and secret organizations. So what the hell is their purpose? What is their goal? Because what me and Indigo are getting are very physical, real 3D reality world stuff going on. So the etheric, the paranormal would be kind of like seeing greys or aliens or UFOs or ghosts. Okay, that's on one side of things. But when you're getting phone calls, that's something very physical. When you're getting helicopters, that's something very physical. And when you're getting people flashing their headlights, that's very physical. So it's almost like there is some department or some kind of group on this planet that is physical, that is aware of the etheric as well. And it's like their job is to suppress it and stop people talking about it or investigating it. Would that be fair to say?
It sounds it. It's like they're giving you a lot of grief, going to a lot of expense to give you a lot of grief, though, as well.
But this is it. It is expense. It's £1,600 per half hour to keep a helicopter in the sky. To do what? Buzz around somebody's house for what reason? And the thing is, I can corroborate what Indigo's talking about, because at the time, Indigo used to live quite close to me, like the next town. And I could actually see a helicopter, and it is Apache. She is right, because I know what a military helicopter looks like. I know what Apache looks like. They've even got a different sound from police helicopters. I would see this Apache buzzing over the town in question, and I would actually text Indigo, and you probably remember me texting you, Indigo, and saying like, they're above your house, aren't they? And you'll be texting back, yeah, they have been for the past 10 minutes.
We'd have a lot of messages backwards and forwards, because again, we would be getting this a lot, and often again, I don't know if you remember this, but when we'd meet up, and especially coming back from being to the UFO Academy, we'd been to your talk now. Do you remember that time when we did the psych cards, Andy?
Yeah.
When you did the psych card test, and I scored kind of like.
Yeah, let's go into that. So
tell you what, we're coming up to a break.
Okay.
So maybe we can talk about that after the break.
Okay.
Because there's still a lot of questions I'd like to ask as well. But I know that if we talk now, we'll go way beyond our thing. So I think it's time that we had a quick 2 or 3 minute break, and we'll be back more with Indigo Phoenix on the Paranormal Peep Show.
Hi, this is Ben Emlyn Jones, regular guest on the Paranormal Peep Show. Tune in to Neil and Andy for all your paranormal updates and insights, and quirky fun chat with some seriously spooky topics.
Hi folks, welcome back to the Paranormal Peep Show with myself, Andy Chaplin, Neil Geddes-Ward, and our guest Indigo. Now you'll probably see on my left, right, that shoulder there's a little woo-woo UFO there. Neil, I think you wanted to ask Indigo something about her UFO experience, didn't you?
Yeah. So basically we have been talking about the strange clown stuff, the circus stuff of helicopters, shining lights through windows and men knocking at the door at strange hours for welfare and things like that. But I want to go back to the actual incident, the first incident where you had this encounter with a craft UFO, or whatever you want to call it. Can you talk us through that? I mean, what happened? When was it? Did you go up inside it? What's the whole thing about that?
Oh, okay. So trying to think back to the actual original ones, that should show you how many there's been over the years now. So I used to think, okay, like when I heard about people being abducted, I thought that they would be physically abducted, and I always would wonder, well, how is that possible? Like they get like taken in the car, but for me, I realized actually you're not physically taken, or maybe it's different for others, but from my experience, I wasn't in body taken. I was in my bed. I was at nighttime. I was sleeping, but I feel almost like it's like holographic. Does that make sense? It's like they took me out of my body,
astrally
and also,
or something.
Sorry,
out of body astrally type of scenario, astral body.
Yeah. And again, this is something I've kind of learned, or this is what I have kind of figured out, that when I've actually seen them, it's like they're holographic, like they're projecting themselves into my room, but they're not in body. I'm seeing their kind of holographic state, and I feel like they've taken me out of my body. So my body is in my room still, it's in the house. So, but they've taken me up actually. And I remember being taken up onto the ship, or waking up on the ship. And at first I'm thinking, this is some weird dream. This is like crazy dreams. I'm used to lucid dreaming and precognitive dreams, but this was like nothing I've ever had before. And it was really strange because it was as clear as day, like I'm speaking to you now. And I remember seeing other beings there that were human as well. And I remember seeing kind of like other people there in different rooms. And I remember being kind of like wheeled in. I was on a bed, but it was very clinical. It was a kind of a metal bed. And when I was taken into a room, again, it was almost very blank. And they had doors, but again, not handles. It's almost like where they're lifted up and down, and they can only be lifted with, again, telepathic communication. And for me, it was quite distressing. I remember kind of just waking up and like asking, why am I here? What's going on? But the strangest thing was, it looked like there were normal doctors around me. I couldn't see their faces. I could only see half their faces, but they looked human to me, or the people, the team that were around me. What I now believe were that there are actual humans, or there are professional people working with them that are maybe hybrids, or that are actual humans. And again, I saw other beings in the background that were more like hybrids, that looked kind of human but weren't. They had human features, but other features that weren't human. They weren't the Greys. Again, these were different kind of like beings. They looked, again, quite reptilian or avatarish, but with kind of human features. And I remember them doing stuff on my body. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I felt like they were putting something into my body or doing something energetically on there. And I just remember kind of trying to communicate, asking, why am I here? What's going on? And they're saying to me that I won't remember fully, but I will be coming back again, and they're going to make more contact with me, and to relax and to lay still, and that they're going to help me with my abilities. That was the first encounter. And then I woke up in my bed and I was like, that's some crazy dream. I went to the toilet and I had marks on my arms and on my legs, and I had bruises that had come up, and I wasn't feeling too good. And I felt very, very weird, kind of just not right. And then over the days after that, I noticed that my senses really increased. Like I became really sensitive to daylight. I couldn't handle being out in the daylight. Like daylight was hurting my eyes. Noises were amplified tenfold, to the point I couldn't be outside. It felt like noises were crushing my head. I started to get, again, major downloads, really strong psychic visions, really deep information that was all sort of accurate when I was giving sort of readings and things. And this went on for a few weeks, where I just felt really strange, and I literally kind of locked myself away. I kind of went through a phase where I couldn't even leave the house. It was just too much sensory overload, where it felt like my whole body was just increased by tenfold, with different senses, different feelings. And then there was kind of like a break of, I would say, maybe 6 months where I felt like there was no activity at all. And again, you know, just psychic ability sort of stayed the same, I guess. And then there was another encounter that I remember, again, waking up on my ceiling and again seeing green light. Generally, before I see them, it's almost like a wave of like neon green light that kind of floods the room, or where I'm like between a sleep state and awake state. State where then again I'm being lifted up and kind of spinning, and again something happening, like a frequency or a pulse going through my body. And then I remember again being up on the ship or waking up in a room, and again they were telling me that this time that I was going to give birth. Like, and this was really, really, really traumatizing, and I haven't really spoken out about this for various reasons. But they told me that I was about to give birth, and I looked down at my stomach and it was swollen. And I couldn't believe it. And I was saying, what's going on? I can't be. Like, how am I pregnant? How am I about to give birth? Like, who is the father? Like, why am I here? Again, there was like a load of surgeons, a surgical team around me trying to keep me calm. Again, I couldn't see their faces. I could only see half of them. And they told me again that this was going to be over really quickly and that I needed to try and calm myself. And again, I looked to the side and I could see other people there as well going through the same procedure. There were 2 other people that I didn't recognize. There was a man and then there was a woman who was also about to give birth. And then I remember literally giving birth, and I'm like, I don't understand how this is happening. How am I here? I just could not comprehend it. I remember screaming and trying to get up and to get out of there. And I couldn't. Everything was like Fort Knox. It literally, again, was the only way to activate the doors was through the mind. And there were these beings coming in. And again, they were opening it and closing it. I remember giving birth and then literally the baby being handed to me. And I'm still in shock. And I remember looking down and holding the baby and it looking up at me. But then within minutes, it felt almost like it had morphed. Like it had aged very quickly. And it looks very hybrid. It looks like me, but it also looked kind of the species that was on the sort of the ship. It was really bizarre. His hair grew really long, really quickly. It was kind of auburn. He had really beautiful, piercing blue eyes. He had olive skin, same coloring as my skin tone. And he started to talk to me telepathically. And he said to me, that he knew what was happening and that it was okay for me not to be distressed, that he was my child, that he was my son, that we would see each other again, but it wouldn't be for a very long time, for me not to be sad, and that he understood the process, but I didn't. And I'm like, I don't understand this. And he had abilities. He said, I have abilities like you, but stronger. And he was telepathically communicating, and he kind of morphed into like a 6-year-old. Jumped up out of my hands, and he was standing in front of me, this big smile on his face. And it was the most craziest thing ever and traumatizing. And he was just smiling. And then he said, do you want to see what I can do? Look at the tricks I can do. And then a ball came flying in and started to bounce up and down. And he was making it bounce with his mind. And then he said, look at this. And then he lifted one of the doors just up and down with his mind, opening it and shutting it. And telling me that he had these abilities, psychic abilities, ESP. And then the other beings came around me and they said to me that I had to understand that this was part of the process and that he was a hybrid and that he is my son. However, it would be a long time before we'd be connected again, and that I could have a few more minutes with him, to talk with him, to hold him, to be with him. But then I had to return back. And I'm distressed at this point. I quite frankly don't know what's going on. It's quite terrifying. I could see other kind of what looked like surgeons or doctors walking around. There was a nurse sitting there. There was other rooms that I could kind of see at the corner of my eye. And I just remember being in so much pain and bleeding down below, and my stomach being really swollen. And he was trying to comfort me, the child. And I just kept saying, I don't understand. I don't understand. And he said, look, I have to go now. I have to go, but it's going to be okay. And then somebody came and they took him and the door lifted. And then the next thing I remember being wheeled out. And then I'm waking up in my bed and I was shaking. And then I thought, okay, that was just a really, really, really horrible dream. I went to the toilet and I looked down. I was bleeding down below. and there was blood in my bed, and my stomach was all swollen. And to this day, it really, really, it traumatizes me. And I haven't really ever spoken out about it because it was that disturbing. It's like, where do you even begin to speak about something like that? The only other person knows is my partner, and he completely believes me because he, at a later point, told me that he's also been taken, and he didn't want to tell anybody because, again, of fear of feeling like crazy or people not believing him. But he's had encounters with more the grey types, of where he said that they've done horrible things like cutting into his body, cutting his legs, cutting his arms, drilling into his brain. And interesting enough, his psychic ability has really kind of gone to another level. Luckily for me, I haven't been subjected to that, but I would say obviously giving birth to a hybrid child was pretty distressing. And I honestly do think that it was real. It was too vivid. It was too much detail. With the child talking to me, it looked like me, but it kind of didn't. It had similar features, but literally with it aging within minutes, and its intelligence was just out of this world. But it knew, it understood, and it was trying to comfort me and tell me that it's okay and not to be upset, to not cry. And sometimes I do think about it and get quite upset, thinking, you know, if this is real, which I think it is, that, you know, there's a child up there that kind of belongs to me in some weird way. After that, I've had encounters. I've never seen him again. He's never come to me in dream state or physically. I've not seen him as of yet. But I have been taken other times after COVID and after getting really sick with pneumonia. I was having a lot of issues with my lungs. I had scar tissue. Antibiotics weren't working. And then I remember again them coming to me in dream state as well, and telling me that they're going to do healing on my body. And again, I didn't see them. I just heard them telepathically communicating. And then I remember feeling them touch my body, my side, my back, my lungs, and feeling pain. And them telling me that they can help me rejuvenate and that it's easy. And I remember saying to them, how can you do this? My lungs are so damaged. Like, I'm not going to get better. And they were almost like laughing, saying, like, you don't be silly, like, we can heal anything. And they started to tell me that the aging process doesn't have to happen, that we all have codes inside of our body, almost like SIM cards or different genetics of coding. And that if we learn to tap into the codes or download the correct coding, we can start changing the molecular structure of our body. So there's quantum healing. And then this is a whole new level. They were trying to tell me that humans don't actually need to age. They don't. And that we can reverse the aging if we can learn to biohack the coding in our body, which they started to do. And they started to shift or activate in my body. And they started to clear up my lungs and pull something from my lungs. And they started to work on my third eye. They started to help clear that because, again, with all the medications, I'd felt blocked. And then they took me off planet. Again, I saw almost like different solar systems. They took me out of my body. They showed me the moon. They showed me other solar systems. They told me different things that were happening. They told me that there's different things happening, different star seeds, different planets, different star races, and that some are friendly and others are not. Some are working together, others are not. And they said, just like on Earth with war, there's war up there too, off planet and on planet. And they were telling me about different things. I was questioning them, asking them about CV, asking them, why have I got sick? And they were they found this quite humorous in a weird way. They were almost like laughing at it in a sense of saying, you know, we're being consumed of taking this so seriously, and that a lot of the illnesses that we're having, we really don't need to. That if we could really listen and connect or allow them to help us, we could cure and eradicate the illnesses and stop the aging process. And it really was more simpler than we could ever imagine. And they also started to tell me about the different kind of hierarchies. You know, it's more complicated than just shadow government or governments controlling us. They were like, no, they're like, you have your government, you have your order here, but then you have higher things governing the government here, and then you have off-planet governments overseeing the governments here and up there as well. They were showing me all of this, and they were showing me that there's stuff happening on the moon, or what it looked like the moon to me, and different kind of space projects happening. and telling me that there's actual humans or governmental people up there doing work. And then I was being shown different kind of flashes of different things, and almost where I don't know if I was remote viewing or RVing, and they could see me looking at them. And they're like questioning, saying, the vessel has woken up, the vessel is seeing us, the vessel can see us. And I remember being shunted out. It was almost like I wasn't meant to see this. And I kind of went into the realms of like NASA, and then seeing different people talking, almost like airways being kind of intercepted. It was so strange. But after that, I noticed that my health really increased and the pain in my lungs kind of disappeared. My breathing got a lot better. My skin looked better. And even people around me were saying that I looked 5 years younger compared to where I was literally within 48 hours of this happening.
I kind of get the impression that what might be going on is these groups of people that are kind of taking people and then making them have babies. It does feel like it's part of the human hybridization program with the ETs, and it feels like there's possibly a positive faction that is kind of like working with humans, and there's a negative faction, and it's almost like there's a completely different civilization that's almost parallel to human civilization, but it's still within our reality. It's still, it's still got connections on planet Earth and, as you say, the moon, and it's just so bizarre. Because Neil, we've spoken to people who have gone into the human hybrid program, haven't we? And there's a lot of debate about what's really going on the moon. I mean, there's the one side, the conspiracy side, in terms of have we even landed on the moon, in terms of like the Apollo missions, but then you've got the other side to do with the shadow government and the secret space program, and is there a faction of people on this planet who have got far beyond the technology that we're aware of that are doing things on the moon?
Yeah, 100%. And they have RV, they have remote viewers as well. They have other people also working with them or helping them, because it was like I accidentally tuned into a different, whether it's a dimension or different place simultaneously, where I'm seeing all this stuff happening, or where these projects are taking place. There's different things happening. But again, them showing me the whole holographic sense of this dimension being very holographic. And again, them telling me that, they can take me at any time, because again, it's literally just out of the body here. And again, the holographic imprints, and in a way, without sounding too cliche, but very much breaking out of the Matrix or Matrix style kind of imagery being shown to me. And it was strange, because as the healing was being done on me, there were these things also observing, almost like astronaut kind of looking people or creatures. And while I'm having healing done by these different beings, and there were different beings coming in playing different parts as they were working on different parts of my body. There were different beings on the third eye, different beings on my lungs and on my back, and then there was something else watching all these kind of other beings, and they're like, the vessel can see us. The vessel, they called me the vessel. They didn't call me human, they didn't call me a person. It's the vessel is waking up, the vessel can see us. And me going, I can see you, I can see you. And they're like, they look shocked that I could see them. It was so bizarre. And literally, as I said, the vessel, that's going to stay with me. The vessel is waking up.
It's interesting you say vessel. The reason I say that is because I remember reading some stuff, I think it was back in the 90s, about alien greys supposedly in Area 51, things like that. And they sort of said, why do you come here? What are you doing with us people? And this alien grey that supposedly interviewed, as it was transcribed, they refer to us as containers, which is a bit like vessels. Yeah, like containers. And people speculate containers of the soul, maybe. I don't know. And so you could be the vessel of the soul, perhaps. Or the container of the soul. That's the only thing I can think of on that. But carry on.
Yeah, and I was asking, why are they doing healing on me? Why are they helping me? Why are you helping me? And they said, why not? Why would we not help you? And I said, I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. It's almost like they find humans really humorous, or our mind. It was almost like all my kind of stuff. It was almost like humorous to them. And it was like, well, you've asked for healing. You've asked to get well. Why wouldn't we help you? And they told me that I have work to do here and that I have things to do. And I asked them what, and they told me that they told me with what they were trying to show me, they were trying to teach me coding. They were showing me genetic coding of the body, and they said that I will move into aiding others to help them eradicate or reverse illnesses, which I'm already starting to do. I've already started to have phenomenal results with major healings with people where they're reversing major illnesses. But they told me that this is on a whole new level, that, again, all of us can do this once we learn the coding. And they said that I will learn different things and that they will show me. They've been teaching me and downloading these sequences and symbols, which are really relevant here. They also said, again, about the government. When I asked them, look, why is this all happening? You know, why are we being controlled? They said an interesting answer. They said to me that be careful what you wish for. You might not be able to handle the truth or the reality, and that not all governments are there to completely control or block us. They said that for some, it's there for a safety net, because if humans were to really wake up or understand the real level of what is going on, it would be too much for their minds. It would blow their minds. They couldn't comprehend the level of what is going on. And if they started to understand the true order of what is happening, they would never get out of bed again. It's almost like civilization would fall apart, right? Because then if you realize, or if we start to understand what is happening with the space projects or what's going off planet, religion would fall apart. Orchestrated religion would fall apart. Orchestrated religion is there to control us, and to not control us, but to keep us contained. And they were saying if everyone started to understand and know about them, it would cause chaos to the system. It would fall apart. There would be no one going to work. There'd be no one doing anything, right? Because you can imagine you're being taught, you know, be a good person, you go to heaven. Be a bad person, you go to hell, you know? If you start to realize there is no heaven and hell, they're just concepts, they're just programs. And you start to realize that actually it's far more than that. It just will blow civilization apart. So in a way, they said that it's there for our own safety in somewhat ways, and it's there to keep this civilization running. So they were explaining to me that some of it isn't as bad as we think. However, they did show me the darker side. They showed me that we are at spiritual warfare. A lot of people have been asking me, look, are we at World War III? And they're laughing at this. They're like, come on, this is far bigger than World War III. We have been in war for many civilizations, like for many, many centuries. And they told me that, again, my tribe, they showed me my bloodline on my tribe. And they said there's been many before me and after me. And again, there will be more to come. They were showing me a bigger picture of so many different realities happening, which again just blew my mind and has left me questioning everything in so many ways.
We've heard this before, haven't we, Neil, about kind of like I keep going on about this, the spiritual warfare, the light versus the dark. I mean, it's kind of depressing because it seems like it's infinite. It seems like this particular reality there's just an infinite light versus dark war, and we're just, I don't know, for whatever reason. Yeah.
It's the order, Andy, because again, I asked these questions, right? I'm like, I just don't get it. Like, why is this happening? And they said it's part of the order. Us humans are constantly like black and dark, white and good. They're like, no. And again, karmically, they showed me, again, that it really isn't about karma. Again, karma is almost like a programming like heaven and hell. With what they showed me or told me, karma doesn't really come into play here. And they said, though, as depressing as the humans may find this, they said that everything is in balance. So for every dark act that's being done, there's an equal good deed being done. So for every dark person, there's another light worker. So they said you can't have one without the other. Unfortunately, it's about balance.
And there's not a lot we can do about it, is there? It's just that is how it is.
Just choose the good.
Well, again, they were telling me, I don't think it's necessarily about winning this one war. They told me that this has been going on for centuries. And I don't really feel like, again, everyone's talking about the golden age or this is the age. I mean, things are definitely getting biblical for sure, but they've said this has been going on for a really long time, and it's not going to be just one thing that swings this. But they did say to remember my integrity, to remember who I am, to remember my bloodline, and not to sell out and not be corrupted by the dark. Because again, through my life, I've had many different people come to me. They've offered me contracts, they've offered me money, they've offered me somewhat fame, I guess. But again, I feel I'm very connected to the ancient civilizations or the Cyrus energy, which again is very much about protecting Earth, about helping others, and again, keeping the ancient pathways or the truth alive. They told me that there will be many false light workers and there will be a lot of disinformation, even in regards to them, and people coming forwards talking about them, but giving disinformation. But they said to me, it's really important to remember who I am, where I've come from, and to remember my mission. And they said there's hundreds of us on this earth that are also here to aid the vibration of the earth, to help people activate, to help starseeds awaken. And this is going to sound really crazy, and I doubt with everything that I've said, this is going to be the one. But I do feel quite hybrid now, to be honest. I do feel with all the stuff that they've done on me, all the energy work, I feel almost like, again, I feel that I'm disconnecting with the human side. It's like I don't connect. And even as a child, I really struggle to fit in. I don't connect with other humans. I have empathy, but I don't think like them. It's almost like when I talk about myself as well, it's like I don't feel like others do. It's really, really bizarre. And the more that they've done work on me, I've had these encounters, the more I've kind of felt more and more detached.
Yeah, I can understand that as well. And Neil, you've probably heard a lot of guests saying that, especially kind of like psychic and spiritual and UFO backgrounds, that they don't quite feel that they fit in with society, that they're kind of on the outskirts. Most people kind of go up and they're into kind of, I don't know, EastEnders or football or whatever it is that's on TV, and people thinking outside the box are just looking around and thinking, what are these people doing?
Yeah, an analogy I'd give is that most of the people that are in their day-to-day lives, they're the actors on the stage, and people like us lot, and not to try and make us sound special, but it's just our perception of it is that we feel more like, we're occasionally on the stage with people, but we're more like the scene hands a little bit, and we're seeing things from a slightly different perspective because we're off stage slightly. We're not in the center of the stage taking part in the main play of Earth, but we're slightly off the stage. We can hear what's going on. We can hear the noise. We can hear the scenes. We know the lines that are coming up sometimes. And we're there to assist with shifting the scene a bit. When the scene changes, we have to take the props off the stage and put the new stuff on there. How that translates into physical reality, I don't quite know, but that's what it seems to be, that we're assisting in the manufacturing of this play, or one version of this play. Now, with the idea of these UFOs and this baby, was that all astral as well? This baby was or physical, or is it an astral kind of birth?
I feel like it was both. It was both. It's hard. I think I'm struggling to explain what I mean about the astral. Like, I believe a lot of the encounters that are happening to people, they are taken onto the ship, no question. But I feel like if we were observing or watching it, I feel almost like, you imagine you're driving along and you might see someone slumped asleep in a car, right? And they've been taken on the ship, but the physical body is still in this dimension. But our soul or holographic it's being projected up there. I feel that's how they're taking us. Well, that's how I was taken. And I feel like I physically, because when I woke up, I had blood. I was bleeding down below and my stomach was swollen. I looked like I was about 6 months pregnant. My belly was really big. And for about 2 weeks, I was really sore. I was in a lot of pain. And there was blood on my sheets. And it was hard when I was going to the toilet as well. When I was urinating, it was very, very painful. It felt like I had a gynecological procedure. And any females watching this will understand what I mean by that. So again, that also makes me feel like it wasn't just astral level. I mean, for all I know, maybe physically I was taken, but I don't know, obviously, because, you know, I wake up and I'm back in my bed. But again, with these encounters, they're very different to normal dreams. I'm feeling pain. I can tell you clear details. It's bright, that it's colorful, there's key detail.
Yeah. So, I mean, the other interesting thing is that you talked about the doctors on board this craft. Now, there's a few people that have spoken about sightings of doctors on board craft, and they appear to be dressed as doctors or surgeons, when in fact it's more of like a disguise, and they're being referred to as screen memories. So they try and appear as familiar figures of authority, of knowledge and respect, i.e., surgeons, doctors, and things like that. But when you say get regressed or something, you actually get the true picture of who these people are, whether they're humans or greys or otherwise. And sometimes they're shown as cartoon characters. Ronnie Kinsella said he saw the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, and he also encountered doctors who wanted to do a procedure on him as well. And we felt that they possibly were these screen memories. So I'm wondering if in your case, you know, they were dressing up as or masquerading as doctors, but they were doing other stuff. I mean, perhaps they were doing surgical stuff as well, but they were trying to look more like Earth doctors to be kind of comfortable rather than how they would typically look. So how long was it afterwards you started to get the strange knocks on the door, the helicopters and things like that after this? And it's a bit strange. Presumably you didn't tell anyone about this, and yet here you are getting hassled about it.
Yeah, like that's certainly not something I'm going to scream from the rooftops, you know. And again, I think it was difficult for me, right? Because I'm at this stage in my career now where, without sounding big-headed, I've got a big enough following who know that I'm good at what I do with the psychic side. They know that I'm accurate. So regardless of, you know, how I dress, what color I dye my hair, what I say, what I talk about, because anyone that knows me knows I am quite vocal. I'm not your PC, normal love and light psychic medium, you know, got your nan who loves cups of tea here. I am talking about quite out there events. I think back then I was worried about speaking out because I was still reading for the 9 to 5, the girl next door, you know, the normal average kind of readings. And I think over time now it's sort of progressed into more light workers finding me, or other contactees, or other people that have had similar experiences, whether they're feeling the vibrational energy or whether they've just heard some of the things because I've been more vocal about it. And now I'm reading more for light workers, which I enjoy doing because it gives me a more wider scope to do what I love and to not have kind of controlled information, or, you know, will my girlfriend come back to me? Will my husband, you know, the mainstream kind of stuff. But I had to be mindful because I didn't want to get completely blacklisted back then. And if I came out talking about alien abductions and giving birth to kind of reptilians or hybrids, you know how that's going to look, right? Even to the most open-minded people, it's going to be like, she's lost it, she's gone mad. And I just wasn't ready.
Have you seen any full-on reptilians?
Say that again?
Have you seen any full-on reptilians, any actual, you know, lizard-like beings?
Yeah, I have, but that's been more with psychedelic medicine. So that's been through mushroom ceremonies. So again, with the shamanic side of things, you know, I've had experiences without psychedelics, and I've had really deep experiences with psychedelics, with mushroom therapy, you know. And there's a big difference between sort of doing magic mushrooms and getting on it, and then doing mushrooms in a ceremonial space, to go in with the mindset of connecting and channeling and trying to gain information. And I've done tests with, you know, let's see what I can do, if I can gain credible psychic information, or if I can connect and see how accurate it is. And I've done both. I've done it to gain access to psychic information or remote viewing, which has been very, very interesting. I've documented it, and some of my wild predictions, I'm going to be honest, have been from psychedelic medicines, and they've been accurate, which again just blows the mind. And I've had other people in different locations who have administered the medicines, and we've been able to communicate and go into details at a later date of what each other are actually wearing and doing, and actually giving credible information about how the room is looking. And we haven't even been there. We're in like other side of the country and documenting the same kind of visions, but we're in completely different locations. And this is another reason I think psychedelics are banned. They know this. They know that the mushrooms, power of mushrooms, especially ayahuasca, completely blows the pineal gland. It opens it up and you're going to get communication. And again, with my partner and other people who have done ayahuasca, that opens up the gateways for ET communication, where we have seen reptilians and more, what I would say, darker energies. The energies around me, I would say, with the healing have been much lighter. The ones with more than medicines and the deeper we've gone have been darker, more
Why is
kind
that?
of.
Why is that, do you think? Why wouldn't, for instance, medicines, because medicines are supposed to heal, why wouldn't you get,
they do.
why wouldn't you connect with lighter beings? Why is it darker beings?
I don't think it's solely just connecting with dark energies, but I just think, especially with ayahuasca, I mean, ayahuasca is a beautiful natural medicine if it's conducted in the right way. And I think, again, a lot of the ones that are connecting and tuning in were wanting to find out the truth of what's going on. And whether people like this or not, the reality is that our world, or planet Earth, or this 3D vibration, people are saying, oh, it's the government, they're controlling us. The government have no power. The reality of it is it's more the reptilian sides that are actually pulling the strings and controlling the actual government. So I think with the medicines will show you the truth. They will show you the reality of your existence. And whether people want to hear it or not, the reality of our existence is far from God sitting on a cloud and white fluffy feathers. It's showing us the true orchestrated nature of what's happening. So I think that's why we're seeing more kind of intenser energies that are pulling the strings.
How do we get out of this mess?
I think it's learning to raise your frequency, but also to break out of the programming and not to go into a fear-based vibration. I think, again, this is something I've learned and they've taught me, and especially with like entity removal, demon attachment, things like this, they get to you. And this is a really interesting one. And I know this is going to sound batshit crazy, but when my partner was being taken by the Greys and he was having all this horrific stuff done to him, something said to him, start laughing. Start laughing. And he's like, I'm screaming, I can't. And then he tried to start laughing. He laughed and then they went. And he got transmuted into a different dimension. When he came back and he told me, he basically said that he believes that it's about vibrational state, and that the Greys, the reptilians, the more darker forces, they'll feed off you in fear vibration. So this is why I think on a planetary level, with the propaganda and the fear-based stuff, they're energy harvesting. If you're in a place of fear or you're in a depression state, they can attack you. But if you're in a higher frequency, so laughing, love, they can't get to you. They can't feed off you. It's much harder. So he basically says, if you're having a bad experience, you need to try and laugh, or you need to send love, or you need to give love to these beings, because they don't match that frequency. So how do we get out of this? I think we have to just raise our frequency and not get pulled into it. I think sometimes going down the rabbit hole, this is another thing they showed me. It's like the rabbit hole is the rabbit hole. It is the conspiracy above the conspiracy. Some of this stuff has been trapped or designed to trap us in this kind of dimension or a weird depression state and a time loop. Does this make sense? I know I'm rambling a little bit.
It does. It's just a question of, like, for instance, coronavirus and, the imminent World War III thing. I was actually in a pretty good state of mind, and I was actually living my life pretty much how I wanted to and having a great deal of fun. So my vibration was actually quite positive. And then along comes coronavirus. But the thing is, there's one argument that we create our own reality, and that we have to kind of manifest our own reality by being positive. But I was being positive, and yet coronavirus did come along. And then even through coronavirus, as it started to wane, as it started to kind of disappear, I was going back into a more positive state, So then along comes the whole Ukraine situation. Again, not my doing. I didn't create this. My vibration and energy didn't create this. So how can we vibrate ourselves out of this if we're not vibrating ourselves into it, really?
It's a good question. I mean, there's so many different versions of us in different dimensions simultaneously, but that's quite deep and complex in itself, and that's probably for a different show. Another show in itself for that one. I think whether we like it or not, there's parts of us that we're human. we're human. We're here. We're in the 3D. We came back here, or I believe that our souls signed up for this before we came here. We might not remember it, but we made soul contracts. And I think that we've come here to aid planet Earth. And in different ways, I think that we have to go through crisis points. We have to feel this. We have to go within these emotions to be able to help and understand others. But I think it's about observing. I think the more we step out of the so-called matrix and not get pulled into it, and as Neil was saying, it's about it's like a big pantomime playing out, like a big stage of just watching all these characters play different roles. And I think it's about not getting too caught up in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just letting things unfold, because whether we like it or not, there is order. Believe it or not, there is balance. Some of these things have to take place. It just is how it is, unfortunately. But I think that we're here to play parts as well. Maybe that's awakening people, helping people. There's healers. And that's why there's so many different people, light workers and healers and UFO contactees, because it's about, again, spreading the knowledge and letting people know that there's so many different things happening right now.
Should we delve into a little bit of the circus again? Let's just talk about Princess.
Okay, so yeah, Princess was an interesting one. And once again, Andy, you happen to be around. It's you that's causing this circus. Who knows?
Maybe.
So I was, and correct me if I was wrong, we were at an event, weren't we, up in Epping? Was it Epping? It was at a psychic kind of tea party speed reading thing.
It was Basildon, that one.
Basildon. Yeah, and I had been, placed on a table to give readings, just minding my own business. It seems like a normal day of psychic readings. And in comes this woman who was insistent that she wanted to be placed on the table with me. The organizer tried to place her on a different table, but she insisted that she wanted me to be her reader and she wasn't going to get moved. So she kind of sat down and she said, I don't care how long I have to wait, but I want a reading with you. And I know that you're good. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, that's good to know. Have you heard about me? You're on my Facebook. And she smiled and she's like, yeah, you could say I know about you. And I was like, oh, okay. Obviously, I couldn't pay too much attention. There's like 6 other people there. So giving my readings. And I get round to her. Automatically, I feel a shift in the energy. She feels different. She's dressed differently. She's dressed very official or very, what's the word? Kind of, suit, trousers, smart jacket, looked quite official, well-to-do. And then she kind of started to twist the necklace, like almost where she wanted me to kind of see it. She was playing with it like this, making it very, very obvious. And I noticed it had the Freemason symbol on it. And again, I thought, oh, interesting, people can buy Freemason necklaces, you can get them on eBay. That doesn't really mean very much. And then I started to tune into her, and then I started to get downloads, and I was like, okay, this is quite heavy stuff. This is not normal information. So I said to her, I don't know if you want me to share this with you, and I don't know if it's going to be appropriate, especially we're doing a speed reading or a speed event. And I said, this stuff is quite heavy, so you might want to maybe come and see me privately. And she's like, no, I insist. I want you to tell everybody. I want you to tell me what you see. I'm like, are you sure? She's like, yeah. So I said, well, you work for the government and you are in an official position, aren't you? And she's like, yes, I am. And I said, okay. And I said, I see links with the USA and America, and I see that you're going to be going there soon. And she's like, yes, continue. And I said, you work for the Ministry of Defense or something? And she went, yes, you really are as good as they say. And I'm like, this is a bit weird. understandably, everybody's sitting around, like, looking at each other, umming and ahhing. They're like, who is this woman? What is going on? Is this a setup? And I'm getting uncomfortable now because I know that the energy is real and I'm trying to figure out what is going on here. This is not normal. How do you know me and what is your purpose here? But obviously I'm having to keep professional, a smile on my face and act like this is just normal. Luckily for me, it was coming up to a break. So the event organizer sort of called time, which I was relieved. And I kind of went outside to get some air and she followed me out and she stood there. And she looked at me and then she said what my birth name was, which I'm not going to say on camera. And I looked at her and she said, you do know I've come here for a reason, don't you? And I said, yeah, I've got a feeling that you're here for other pretenses than just the normal psychic reading. She said, do you know who the Eastern Star is? And I said, no, I don't know who the Eastern Star is. And she said, do you know who Masons, the Freemasons are? I went, yeah, it's a boys' club, isn't it? You know, I'm acting really calm. I'm just thinking I can't be doing with this tonight of all nights. And she's like, yeah, no, it is, but there's a female sector. Did you know about this? I said, no, I didn't. I said, do tell me more. I thought in this case, it's best to let her do the talking, right? Let's see what she wants to tell me. So she said, I don't have long. My chauffeur, my driver is waiting for me, but I've made contact with you. I know about you. I know your full name. I know your birth date. I know what you do. I know that you're a psychic. I know that you have remote viewing, and we're interested in you. Do you want to change your life? And I'm like, continue. And she's like, well, you know, I know that you're good and I know that you're enjoying what you're doing, but she's like, you do know you could do so much more than just psychic parties. She said, I have seen the stuff on Facebook that you're putting out there. And she said, so have others. And she said, look, if you want to change your life, why don't you meet with me on a different day and I'll explain everything to you. She said, do you want to understand how you do what you do? She said, do you want to work for a different organization where you can get a lot of money? And I was like, I'm just laughing at this point. I'm just like, okay, yeah, like who wouldn't, right? Just kind of like I wouldn't say playing along, but I was just like trying to be humorous. Because again, in my mind, I'm just like, is this really happening? Is this real? Like, you know, you can imagine it, right? If that's happening to you, some random event and the kind of stuff. So she gave me a card and it said princess on it. And it also had an Arabic name, Princess Dimash. And it also had the hallmark of Freemasons, the Eastern Star, with a fax and a telephone number. And she said, we do know where you live anyway. We're going to give you a couple of days to have a think about it. If you don't make contact with me, we'll find a way to make contact with you anyway. Anyway, take care. See you soon. And jumps in a car and goes off. I'm like gobsmacked. I came in and I went straight up to Andy. Do you remember this, Andy? And I said, you just won't even believe what has just happened. And you even were like, who is that woman? Like, what were you talking about? Like, who is she? And I remember telling you about this. But the really weird thing in this, I remember probably 2 weeks prior to that event, me and Andy had been out, I think we'd come back from one of your talks or something. And I remember him randomly saying to me in the car, because he'll get psychic downloads. And he said to me, I feel like the Masons are going to give you an offer, or there's going to be a high up profile coming into your life that's going to offer you something to join them. And we just giggled about it. And we're like, yeah, well, who knows? And we made jokes about Bourne and other things like that. And then it literally happened kind of as Andy had said. Went back that night, you know, I was thinking about it. It was so weird. And for me, I was just like, this is so crazy. I just need to find out more about this. I want to know if this is a wind up. I think a part of me was like, I need to prove that this is a wind up, because if it isn't, it's actually terrifying. So I remember texting her, you know, thinking it's going to be a joke. Maybe someone's put her up to it. Maybe it's one of Andy's mates. Who knows? Because Andy's a bit of a joker, aren't you?
But am I? How many jokes have I played on you?
Well, I know that you've got a good sense of humor and stuff. So, you know,
I'm not really, you know, it's would I go to the expense and the
Well,
hassle of getting someone down to like a
I think
coffee
like
shop meeting?
any rational person, or the bit of rationale I have left at this point after all the circus, I'm trying to come up with a rational reasoning of
how
this
far
person
did you go down the rabbit hole chasing Princess? Because I don't know, I can't remember what actually happened with it. Like, how far did you go with it?
deep.
Go for it.
Do I really want to open up that portal? Because I'm like, this is going to be so interesting. Okay,
You can speak
yeah,
it. You can speak in code if you want to cover anything up, or you feel that you can't mention anything.
So I messaged her back. We had a lot of exchanges, and what I will say is that to this day, I still have evidence that I have and that other people also have of the nature of what was exchanged.
Wow.
Just for my safety, shall we say, because again, my life went crazy, very chaotic, and I'm going to jump here. So I need to kind of like scale this back, because the stuff that then happened went to a whole new level. So again, I kept records of this because it's insane. And I wanted again to prove evidence of this, because again, I'm sitting here saying this and I get that most people are going to think, well, come on, it's bullshit. This is too out there, you know? We exchanged messages. I kind of wanted to know who she was. What does she want? Tell me more about the Freemasons. I thought this is a golden opportunity. If you are legitimate, maybe I can find out more about the order or what you're all about, you know? She kind of marketed it as, you know, we're not what you think we are. You know, we get bad publicity, etc. And I was like, okay. And she's like, let's meet. She didn't want to say too much over messages, understandably, because that leaves a paper trail. We did have about sort of 5 meetings, I would say. She came to my area and she spoke a lot in code. She did give me some key names, and she did claim, and she showed me evidence and her passport, and she showed me that she had diplomatic immunity that did check out to be legitimate. She showed me a passport with the name. She also said that she was working for the Ministry of Defense, and also linked with the USA sides as well. She said that she also was linked with, what's the word? The humanitarian government. Is that the word? Humanitarian
kind of giving aid to people, things like that.
Kind of like that. But then it turns out down the line that really isn't what that's made out to be. That's just the front. Long story short, she said that they were interested in the abilities that I possessed, that they were interested in my remote viewing skills, my precognitive skills. She kind of had veiled sort of like threats. It was almost like, we don't want you to be putting out any more information on your Facebook. You need to be careful about what you're saying. You don't want to really go down for terrorism or being seen as terror, because I was predicting major terrorist attacks before they happened. I was talking about plane crashes, the Egyptian plane crash that happened. And she was saying, oh, I know that you're not linked with that, but what would you do if other people maybe said that you were, and that's how you're tuning into it? So it might be in your best interest if you were to step away from Facebook and public profiles and stop putting out your predictions. And it's best that we keep them between ourselves. She asked me what other downloads I had and what I saw around London, or what I thought was happening. We spoke about different governmental things, and she told me the part that she allegedly was playing in it. She also talked to me about USA sides. She spoke about the Vatican. She spoke about Rome. She spoke about different key people and different names, different aliases, and said that she wanted to take me to them. But first, I had to be enrolled into the Freemasonry, which would be the female sector, which she alleged to be the Eastern Star. She said, once I'm in the Eastern Star, then I will be bypassed into a lower ranking sector in the government, and that she would take me up to London, or where I would have an interviewing process. She spoke about MI5 building. She also asked me what I knew about the crash outside MI5 building. Some years ago, there was a alleged pilot or helicopter that crashed into a crane.
I remember this. Yes, I remember this.
I knew about that.
This was in the fog or something, or
Yeah. Now I have to be
February.
really, really careful what I say now. So that wasn't an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Are you
And
allowed to say who and what the intention was or not?
so the alleged story was that that there were people on the helicopter had crashed into this crane, and that fog had caused it. The reality of it was they were chasing or trying to intervene or intercept something. It was a UFO craft that was linked.
Wow.
It wasn't fog.
In London, of all places.
It was outside the
Deep in
MI5.
London.
It was outside the MI5 buildings.
So what the hell's a UFO doing outside the MI5 building?
Not sure exactly, but they tried to cover it. They covered it all up, basically. And there were a lot of people killed in that, but she knew that I knew about it. And she wanted to ask me how much I knew, what I thought it was in linking with, and if I knew if it was a UFO. And I said, yeah, I do. I didn't go into a lot of detail. And obviously, I'm not going to say too much. I have to be careful in relation to that. But what I can say is it wasn't just a tragic accident. And unfortunately, the other eyewitnesses that can confirm that are dead because, you know, there were a lot of casualties in that, in what happened. So she asked me about that. She was really curious, and it really freaked me out because I hadn't told anyone about that. I'd been given downloads and visions of what actually happened, and I saw it actually transpiring and happening before it happened. And she knew that I knew about it, which was really kind of scary. She also asked me about if I was willing to be tested and to have testing done, and that she wanted to take me to this place outside Bank, the river, and the MI5 buildings, and that she said that there's still an active sector inside there that's still operating, involving in psychic studies or remote viewing, RV. And I said, yeah, I've heard about this a long time ago, but for all intents and purposes, it's not active. It's not real anymore. And she's like, yes, it is. She said the lower down ones don't know that it's happening. She said there's all the paperwork and the lower down ones, but then above that, they know about it. And she said that she could bypass me and get me in. She said that I would go there for a week and that I would be put under different testing. And depending on how I passed the testing, then I would be transferred to America. And with America, I would do work with them.
So that would be presumably CIA.
Yeah.
Do you think her intentions were positive, negative, neutral, or not sure?
I feel like there were a lot of kind of red flags, a lot of testing. I feel like from the day one I was being tested, I was being asked a lot of information, trying to access how much I knew. She offered me diplomatic immunity. So the so-called offer was, you know, we're interested in you. You're young, you have strong ability. We can make you change your life. You know, we can get you to America. She started to ask me about my politics and what I believed in as well, right? My political stance about things. You know, what was my take on Mossad? What was my take on the CIA? What was my take on MI5? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they neutral? What do I know about the Hezbollah? Are the CIA the same as MI5? All these questions I was being asked about. What's my take on war? Am I a patriot to England or America? Do I stand for England or do I stand for America? Would I work for America or would I work for England? She's asking me all these kind of obscure questions. And then it kind of transcended into her talking about how she also works with the CIA and MI5. And then she put kind of questions to me of, what would you say if I told you that MI5s and CIA and MI6 were all one of the same? And what if I told you if Mossad was one of the same thing? Started to get really, really deep. And I was just acting really cool, just like, okay. I just told her really, and this is the honest truth, I have no interest in politics. You know, I'm not for one or against. I stand for the truth, really, and that I have precognitive and I have abilities, but I'm not one to be swayed on either which way, you know. And I kept trying to tell her, I'm not a threat to the government. I'm not a threat to anybody. I'm not opposing for one or the other. And then she sort of went into kind of details about how, you know, war has to happen and things have to happen. And unfortunately, you know, there will be casualties as part of the nature of the beast. It's nature. And she said, you know, there will be death, but it's how it is. So I found that quite cold. You know, it started off really nice. It started off with her, you know, let me buy you lunch. Let's have a nice little chat. And then it started to get more darker by the minute of kind of like the stuff that she was saying. And then it kind of felt a bit threatening towards the end of it. So you need to make a decision, you know, are you in, are you out? You know, she presented me with a Freemason Bible, or the book, a big giant white book of the Freemasonry side. It had like a double-headed eagle on it, and she wanted me to read that. And then ironically, again, I never knew, but almost like not a sign up, but where I fill out details and form on, you know, the Freemasonry or the Eastern Order. And then she started talking about potentially Rome and a person called the Duke of Deleuze, whoever he is. But again, I felt like it was an alias, and different heads of the family. She started talking about the banking industry. She started to talk about Rothschilds and different war going on in between the different family sectors as well, and how it's all interlinked. And I was like, well, how is this linked with the UK and CIA and MI5 and Mossad and yada, yada, yada? And I feel like, again, it was almost like trying to see how much I knew or if I could handle some of the stuff. And it got really bizarre. It really got bizarre, to be honest. And she's like, I can give you diplomatic immunity underneath me. She said that if I'm ever in any trouble or any issues, to present the card that she handed me. And I said, okay, look, I need to really think about all of this, you know, because at first I thought it's a big wind up. It's a bit of a joke. But then obviously the more meetings we're having, I'm like, if this is a wind up, then yes, woman is really bored, you know, it's got a bit crazy. Long story short, I kind of felt like I was a bit out of my depth, and I kind of said, look, you know, I'm not interested. I don't really want to go any further with this. And she kind of got quite nasty, and it was almost like, well, you don't have a choice in this anymore, you know? You can either join us, or if you don't, then you're seen against us. And I'm like, well, I'm not for or against, you know, I'm independent. And she's like, yeah, but you're against us if you don't join us. And I was like, okay, then. So, sorry.
Yeah, that I was just going to say that sounds on the dark side, you know, once they start making threats. And the thing is about diplomatic immunity is it's all very well saying that they'll give you it, but they can also take it away at any time. So if you're in some country and you get in trouble, they could just
it got more darker, because it was almost like she started talking about missions that she wanted me to do, but they would be secret classified missions, and that only she could approve it. And I'm like, well, hang on. If you want me to do this kind of stuff and you're wanting me to trust and believe this, then I need to know. I need to have more kind of evidence, right? Because for all I know, you could be getting me to be committing some serious crimes, which could end me up in serious trouble. So
which has happened. Which has the FBI have done this. There were some people who they actually clocked that the FBI was about to set them up, and so they kind of either got a third party person to kind of document things, or they evidence things themselves. And it turned out that the FBI was trying to get them to do terrorist acts. And it was only because they were quite sly to the fact that they knew that was going on that they kind of like blew the whistle on it. So yeah, it's not looking good, is it? Whoever this princess is.
No, and equally, again, she started talking about kind of satanic stuff, you know, about the Vatican, about blood oaths, about blood pacts, about kind of the reality of the Vatican and what's going on behind the scenes. And again, she kept wanting me to tell her what I'm seeing. They were trying to use my visions. And again, I just started to feel really uneasy, like most people would do.
And I remember you saying, Indigo, that it was very much a one-way street. It was all about what you could tell her, but she'd tell you nothing.
Yeah, and then again, equally on a selfish level, I'm thinking, okay, you're making out you've got all of this stuff, so you need to now start proving this. You know, you're wanting to ask me major questions. You're wanting me to give you potential things. You know, you're making out that you could, you know, do X, Y, and Z. So you need to show me this. You've shown me a passport. You've shown me a diplomatic card. You swan around. You've got a chauffeur. You know, I'm like, I wanted to know who is pulling your strings, because it felt to me like she was just the middle person. She was, you know, lording it up, acting like some big time person. And she's probably going to hear this. And there was a lot of things that I did not tell her, which I knew because she thought that I didn't, but I did. So I knew that this Duke of Deleuze was pulling her strings and that she was having pressure to get me to join because he or they needed me. And if she didn't do the job, she was going to be in trouble.
Do you suspect or do you know who this Prince of Deleuze or whoever this is? Do you know who he is, or do you suspect
Deleuze? I feel like he's been in the wings all this time. She said that he's known about me for a really long time, that she is working with him, and that he also is linked with the Italian families. He's linked with the banking industry, and that he has a lot of weight. She never showed me a photo of him, and she never gave me his real name. But I knew that she'd been sent in by him, if that makes sense.
Do you get the impression he was like a mafia boss, or
no? He was higher up. It wasn't mafia linking. This is something so much bigger. But what my thing was, why send me the middleman, right? I said to her, look, why has he not made contact with me? Why you? And she laughed and she said, because he knew that if he came to you, that you wouldn't speak, that he had to send me in because I would have more chance. And I told him that I'd get the job done. And I remember laughing in her face towards the end. And I said to her, well, you didn't, did you? And I said, ironically, if he had come to me, he would have probably got a better outcome than what you have. And you've completely messed up the mission or whatever you've been sent in to do. You're not very smart. And I don't like how you've handled this. And I don't like being threatened. So why don't you go and F yourself and tell the CIA, MI5, Mossad, or whoever you think you are to go F yourself, because I'm not going to work for you. And why don't you come back with somebody who knows more what they're doing, and maybe let's talk again. And I told her to F yourself. And then I walked out, and I remember her saying, you're going to regret this. And I just laughed and said, whatever. Didn't think anything more about it. And then literally about 3 months later, I got attacked. I got attacked. And then I got arrested after I basically stood up for myself.
Do you want to go into that into detail from beginning to end?
We're running out of time, unfortunately.
Okay, well, we'll have to.
We've overran.
In that case, here, we'll have to continue. We'll continue this another time. We'll have to do a part 2 of this, and we'll have to keep people on tenterhooks as to what this incident was, because it's quite a big one. It's quite a serious one.
And so, as you know, it's all been documented. And what I will say to leave everyone on a cliffhanger is that I also tried to pull the police records and the files of all of this, and half of it has gone walkabouts and been censored out. The cameras of me being, when I was actually arrested and held, basically they had to call in a different person to come to do the interview, and they went down the diplomatic register in the country because they found the card that was linked to me. And I remember saying to the police officer, listen, ring this number, because obviously she said to me, if you're ever in issues, dial the number. And I thought, well, let's find out. So they did dial the number, and then that held me. I was contained for nearly sort of 15 hours, which is a really long time. And then I remember getting released and all charges being dropped. And I said, why? Like, what's happening? Did you ring the number? And he's like, we don't wish to talk about it. You can go. And I'm like, but did it check out? And he's like, you need to go now. And I had someone else look into this who was linked with the police, and it turns out that somehow I'd been put on the register. And the reason why I'd been held for such a long time was they didn't know what I was. They didn't know my alias. It had been put down that I'd flagged on the diplomatic immunity in the country. There's only a couple of names that I put there, and they thought that I was a double agent or some sort. They didn't know what was going on, which meant they had to hold me until they could figure out. And they had to ring MI5 to see if I was working with them, which took time to get, cleared. It turns out that apparently MI5 said to them they had no idea about me. They didn't know who I was, But the weird thing is, once we pulled the record, half of it censored out, and then not giving us video access or, like the CCTV and stuff.
Yeah. Maybe they had Jeffrey Epstein's cell controllers handling that one.
So yeah,
Right.
you can see there's been a lot of circus.
There has been a lot of circus.
Right. Well, I'm afraid we do have to leave it there. I mean, there's obviously so much I wanted to ask, but we have run out. But it's obviously one of those conversations that can go on all night. So we will, with your permission, have you come back in a couple of months' time. We've got other guests to get through in the next few months. So maybe sometime midsummer or something like that, we can get Indigo back. So for the time being, thanks very much, Indigo Phoenix, for joining us on the Paranormal Peep Show. You've been listening to myself, Neil Geddes Ward, and Andy Chaplin, and Indigo Phoenix talking about all her experiences from birth upwards to present day, and we'll obviously continue this at some other time. So for the time being, thanks very much for watching, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll see you next month.
See you later.
Bye.